I'd like to begin by we, the Greater Shepparton City Council, begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Item number 2 is our privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Item number 3, do we have any apologies tonight, councillors?
Yes, apology from Councillor Bruce Giovanetti. Move that be granted leave, please.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ozavari. All in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, do we have any declarations of conflict of interest to declare tonight? No. Item number 5, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. Is any item of the minutes opposed? Also there, part of item 5. Would someone like to move that recommendation, please? Councillor Ozavari?
I'd like to move the recommendation at item 5, Your Honour. Your Honour. Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hazeman. All in favour? Item carried unopposed. We'll now go to public question time. I will now hand it over to Mr Peter Harriott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have one question from Susan Daniel. Notice Susan's in the gallery. Welcome, Susan. Thank you for your question. The question is, it has been reported in the press that Council have received a report on the Ford Road study. Can we, the residents, access a copy of this report? And the response is, Council invited submitters to present to Council regarding the content of their submissions regarding the draft Wanganui Road and Ford Road Shepparton feasibility study and design report 2008 draft report in August 2018. Council is continuing to work with GTA Consultants Proprietary Limited and Regional Roads Victoria to finalise an updated draft report that will be released for further public consultation. It is anticipated that the updated draft report will be considered by Council at an ordinary Council meeting in early 2019, where Council will be requested to release the updated draft report for further comment. The updated draft report has not been finalised and cannot be released prior to being considered at an ordinary Council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Harriott. Councillors, will now go to page 2, item 7.1, petition from Joe Ford Drive, Tatura. There is a recommendation also there on page 2. Would a council please like to move that recommendation?
I'd like to move that recommendation on page 2 as a motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll even read it because it's not that long. The recommendation that the Council receive and note the petition relating to pear trees in Joe Ford Drive, Tatura.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed.
I didn't speak to it anyway.
Councillors, will now go to page 3, item 8.1, contract 1903, contract for management of Victoria Lake Caravan Park, and the recommendation is also on page 3. Will the council like to move the recommendation, please? Councillor Abdullah. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would like to move the recommendation on page 3 as a motion. This recommendation is about the approval of tender submitted by Innovive Private Limited for day-to-day operation and management of Victoria Lake Park, the Lake Caravan Park. And it also authorizes the CEO to sign and seal the contract documents and also award contract extensions if granted. Now, the current contract for the management of Victoria Lake Caravan Park expires in December. So in response to Council's tender notice, there were 2 responses received. Both are not locals, so it seems that it's hard to find locals in this space. However, after tender evaluation, Council officers have recommended acceptance of Innovive's proposal, which where the total tender cost is $927,838, which is less than our current contract. This is a lump sum contract, which also includes a unit price of $30 for cabin cleaning. This contract is for 3 years and with a provision to extend 2 terms of 1 year. Now, it is important for Council to ensure that this accommodation remains an active player in addressing the visitors' accommodation needs of Greater Shepparton. And of course, a long-term solution to have it as a 4-star accommodation is currently dependent on the ownership transfer of the park from state government to the council. However, meanwhile, we want to ensure that the contract includes the performance measurement of these contractors, and to ensure that the caravan park is maintained and monitored closely by the council as well. So this is what this recommendation is about, and I would be happy to endorse it.
Dutton, would you like to speak to the motion?
Caravan Park is a major provider of accommodation and camping in Greater Shepparton, and as such a reliable contractor is required to manage the park. Innovo Park Limited has had extensive experience in managing similar sized parks, and it will be able to fulfil this role in a skillful and effective way.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Speak to the motion. Councillor Summer?
Yeah, it does seem like a hefty sum over 3 years, but that has to factor in all the operational costs as well. I think, as stated, we recognise that there is a need for accommodation in the area, and it's quite a special caravan park to most of us, and we'd like to retain that history. At one stage, there was an internal push for removal of the caravan park. It was only breaking even, it was quite run down, and it was to make room for the new sand building. But at this stage, the consensus is that it could be complementary for families in particular with that space. And from a breaking even point, we're projected to make a net profit of $106,000 per annum, which would be nice if that eventuates. And this will only improve as time goes on, and especially if we're upgrading the infrastructure to a 4-star, as Councillor Abdullah stated. So I have all faith in this tender.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor also wish to speak to the motion? Now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors will now go to item 9.1 on page 6, Flat's signature from the Wilmot Road Primary School request, and the recommendation is also on page 6. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I will move that recommendation on page 6 as a motion.
Seconder, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think it's all in the executive summary. We had the Year 5 and 6 students from, I'm not even sure where they're from, sorry. Wilmot Road, yes indeed. Came and spoke to council and made us aware of the need to have better signage or signage at the flats. It's an important part of our history and our Indigenous history as well. So I think it was a great idea, and it's proven to be so. So council have agreed to a budget allocation of $4,400, including GST, where we will erect those signs as soon as possible. So it's a great outcome. It just shows that, once again, council do listen to good ideas.
Adam, Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, it was more, well, it was important that sign goes up, but it's also important children learn how council works. And they're probably at this stage realising things don't move as quick as they thought they would. We've still got lots of steps to go through this process with permission from parks for the sign, etc. And it's a good learning process, and they realise there's a budget for it, and someone's got to pay for the budget for the signage. And yeah, hopefully they will learn something as well as us gaining a directional sign.
Madam Mayor, can I just point out that the kids are actually watching the live stream via a replay at school. So hello, kids at Wilmot Primary School, and just reinforce what the councillors have said. Thank you very much to the kids and the teachers out there for really getting behind this project, and we look forward to seeing them out there when we put the sign in place.
I'm really glad I seconded it now.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion?
It'll be game after that.
Oh, not what they wanted. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Abdullah?
I would just like to add that it is really pleasing to see our young, our students, our young people, they are taking active role, they are taking active part in identifying an improvement area, and they are coming up with a proposal. They have also taken an initiative to seek the approval of Yota Yota Nation Aboriginal Corporation, so that is also very encouraging. It is also it is definitely important to acknowledge the heritage significance of this site and to enhance its access by installing the signage at a key location such as Causeway. So very pleased to see this development and good work.
Councillor Abdullah. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Speak to it very quickly, just to congratulate both the teachers and the students. It was a really fun day having the kids come in, and they took it very seriously, as did we, in regard to why they were wanting this to happen. So we're really proud to see our local kids make such a difference in our community, and I'm sure they will be down there looking at that sign, knowing that they've actually been part of that success. So well done. All right, we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 12, item 9.2, section 86, Committee of Management Membership Appointment, Arcadia Recreation Reserve and Community Centre and Katandra West Community Facilities. There is a recommendation also on page 12 and 13. Would a councillor please like to move the recommendation? Councillor Ozavari.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendations on page 12 and 13, items 1 through to 3 inclusive.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This we see quite often coming through the council meetings. These particular Section 86 committees can only be appointed or removed by a formal resolution of council. So in essence, they are an administrative and legal requirement. The balance of the matters contained within items 1, 2 and 3 reflects the fact that we firstly acknowledge the appointments of those people to the various committees, and this is integral in the way that council operates together with the community.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Councillor Zari carried very well, thank you.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 16, item 9.3, the Youth Strategy and Action Plan. There's also a recommendation on page 16. Would a councillor please like to move the recommendation? Sorry, move a motion. Councillor Summer.
Recommendation as a motion on page 16. I might read it out. That the council note the draft version of the Greater Shepparton Youth Strategy and Action Plan 2019-2022. Release the draft Greater Shepparton Youth Strategy and Action Plan 2019-2022 for public consultation for a period of 4 weeks, commencing on 21st of November 2018 and concluding on the 19th of November 2018. December 2018. Note that the Greater Shepparton Youth Strategy and Action Plan 2019-2022 will be presented to a future council meeting for adoption following consideration and feedback received, and they're in dot points ordered 1, 2 and 3.
Very much. Councillor Summer, do I have a seconder, please? Abdullah. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, this is our second youth strategy and action plan. We've built a little bit on the first. We've done some consultation with service providers and partnerships to try and move forward with beneficial outcomes, and this is a chance for young people to also have a say. We'll go out to public consultation for 4 weeks and see what comes back to us. Really, we want self-determination when it comes to young people in our region. We know that a lot of young people decide to move to Melbourne or elsewhere after they grow up, and we want them to have happy memories here and live the best lives they can, be engaged, be active, be the best version of themselves. So hopefully the kids can get around it, because we do listen, as evidenced by the last motion, and if there's anything specific that they want out of it, now's the time for us to know.
Much. Councillor Summer. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would like to encourage our young people, who are our future, to actively get involved in this strategy and provide their feedback. Council has taken a whole of community approach here. That is there's no single organisation that is responsible or for the better outcomes for our youth. So it's a very combined effort. So that's something that, so now we have a very explicitly defined strategy, and our young people should participate and make sure that, whatever they want to see in this region gets implemented through this strategy and through the work of all these, all the stakeholders and service providers. So fantastic effort, and really hoping to see some good feedback and active participation from our young people.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillor, we now go to page 22, item 10.1, appointment of Acting Chief Executive Policy. The recommendation is also on page 22. Would the councillor please like to move a motion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommendation on page 22, being that the council adopt the appointment of Acting Chief Executive Officer Policy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Do I have a seconder, please?
Second the motion, Madam Mayor, unless Mr Orisvari did.
Adam? Okay. Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Look, at the present time, when the CEO is absent for any period or an extended period, it requires a resolution of council to appoint an acting CEO. And the Act itself is quite explicit on the appointment and recommends that a formal process be in place. So what is proposed is that for leave not exceeding 4 weeks, the CEO will appoint a senior officer into the acting role under his delegated authority, and any period of time exceeding the 4 weeks will still be a resolution of the council. So it's a tidying up and a bit of good governance to have this policy in place.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, nothing further to add, Madam Mayor.
Councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 24, item 10.2, October 2018 monthly financial report. The recommendation is also on page 24. Would the council like to move the motion, please?
I'll do it. I'll recommend it. The recommendation on, excuse me, I'll move the recommendation on page 24. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, as council have seen, we're heading in the right direction as far as the monthly financial report goes. We're travelling very, very well. Only things that aren't sitting where they should be are classed as favourable anyway, so that's always a good sign. Our contracts that are starting to roll in and be awarded will start making the hole in the in that area, and of course this time of year, new budget takes a while to get the contracts out there. So for an update, I usually go to our Director Chris Teisel, but I'm delighted to be told that our assistant Charlene Still will give us an up-to-date right with lots and lots of detail.
Yes. So the year-to-date surplus remains steady with the Q1 adopted forecast year-to-date budget. We're currently projecting a full-year surplus of 13.25 million, which is about 1.8 million below the Q1 adopted forecast full-year surplus. And this is largely impacted by the timing of receipt of capital grants and contributions. And then our materials and services, there's been some forecast increases there, and that's due to the rising fuel and gas prices. Under the capital works statement, the year-to-date actuals are slightly ahead of the Q1 adopted forecast year-to-date budget, which we're about 3% ahead at the moment. And we are 1.8 million of the current full-year capital works forecast has been spent, and majority of that works to date is in our roads, which is about 51% year-to-date actual, and our balance sheet year-to-date and full-year forecast working capital remains within the council target band, which currently is over the 120%, and Vargo indicate that working capital ratio higher than the 100% is considered low risk. So there's a positive there.
For that, Charlene. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. We now go to page 26, item 10.3. Revocation, if I get that word out, of special rates and charges policy. The recommendation is also on page 26. Would the council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Hayes.
Be my guest, Councillor.
I'll move the recommendation printed on page 26 that the council revoke the special rates and charges policy 16.POL2.
Very much. Do I have a
I'll
seconder,
second the
please?
motion.
Councillor Adam. Councillor Hazel, would you like to speak to the motion?
I've got no idea why we in fact had this particular policy. I'm assuming it's one from some significant time ago, because now the Act itself prescribes the process that the council must follow if declaring a special rate or special charge. So there is no need to have this policy, and to get rid of it is a particularly good idea, given that there arises a potential for conflict between the policy and the Act. So to do away with it makes good sense.
Councillor Hazel and Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
That's why I second Councillor Hazel's motions, Madam Mayor. There's no need to really add to it, except to say that this has been a superfluous type of policy, so I agree entirely that it should be revoked.
Very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Patterson?
I'd just like quickly to say this is my very favourite thing that can happen in council. We're losing a whole layer of governance, and that's a good thing. It makes it easier for us, and it makes it easier for people that are going to work with us, so it's a good thing.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 28, item 10.4, request to register for Procurement Australia Panel Contract 1806 0711, provision of information technology products and services. The recommendation is also on page 28. Would a council like to move the motion, please? Barry.
I move the recommendation, Madam Mayor, on page 28, that the council authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign the Procurement Australia Panel Contract for provision of information technology products and services.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ozzavali, would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, it's fairly self-explanatory in the sense that these panels are endorsed by the state government as a preferred method of procurement, and specifically made available to council under a standing ministerial exemption. But in more fundamental ways, it's strength in numbers that you can get a better price if there's a lot of people looking for the same sort of equipment. In this particular case, IT is expensive. It's a form of infrastructure, and it is a substantial cost to the council, and any improvement in value is got to be a good thing.
Councillor Zavari. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Nothing further to add, thanks.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. We now go to page 31, item 10.5, Chief Executive Officer Professional Development. The recommendation is also on page 31. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
I'll move that recommendation on page, whatever page it's on, 31, I think.
31.
Thank you. I'll actually read it out. It's a very small paragraph. That the council note this updated report in relation to the Chief Executive Officer's professional development for 2018-2019.
Shall I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Thank you very much. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, this is in relation to our CEO attending the Harvard Kennedy School to take part in a senior executive program, which is Harvard, basically. I think if you read the executive summary in some more detail, you'll find out that the CEO has, I won't use the word neglected, but hasn't attended some other development programs in lieu of this program. So even though we're talking around $25,000 all up, in effect it's half that amount roughly because of the other programs that the CEO hasn't attended. I think it's something that would really, I think we have to be really at the forefront when it comes to developing personal skills of our directors and our CEO especially. So I think it's a great opportunity, and no doubt Mr. Harriott will come back absolutely knowledgeable to the full extent of capacity of his. Out of words, I was going to use the word brain there, but I'm sure. No, I think it's a great program, and I think Councillor Hazelman has also partaken in this many years ago, and I think he also made it quite clear to our councillors how helpful it is and how important it is.
Adam, Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I think our organisation turns over something like $166 million a year, so we need the brightest and the smartest at the top. It's very important we're up to date and our leaders are up to date with the best ways of doing things possible. I've always thought Harvard would be a good fit for myself, but apparently I've got to finish secondary school, so that's off the address for a while. But I heard a guy speak once, Tom O'Toole, and he was questioned that what if you train someone and they leave? And his answer is, what if you don't train them and they stay? So it's very important we get our best to receive the best training and see the latest ways, the latest developments of doing things. And the CEO's perfect position to do it. He can relay that back through the organisation. And it's a great investment for our region. You know, people probably knock us, I don't know, but you've always got people knocking us for something. But you know, you've got to look at the positives, and this would be a great thing for our region. We can really kick goals after this.
Councillor Patterson, will any councillor wish to speak against the motion? To speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 33, item 10.6, contracts awarded under delegation. There is also a recommendation on page 33. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Ozavari.
I move the recommendation, Madam Mayor, contained on page 33.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Mayor. These are a common feature in most agendas for Council, and they are a window to the workings of Council in terms of contracts and the provision of relevant services, their status, and it's a way of people to take an active interest as ratepayers in relation to what council business is, and it's a form of transparency which I wholeheartedly support.
Very much, Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Usually when I look through these agendas, I flick straight to this one because it gives us a fairly good insight of where we're heading. It's not just the big ticket items under here. These are under delegation, so there's smaller things such as Aquamove's master plan, concept design coming up, even something as mundane as the delivery of a new landfill compactor. All these things are of interest to most people, so I find this the most interesting part, and so far it's worked well, and happy to continue with that format in the agenda.
Thank you very much, Councillor Summer. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazelman.
I'm going to highlight one contract and hope it doesn't set a trend that we pick bits and pieces out of this every month, but the very first contract awarded under delegation, the construction of Southdown Street Extension. Councillors will recall a few years ago during the construction of Verney Road that for some bizarre reason Southdown Street was chosen as the detour, and I think at that stage, it probably still does, it held the title of being the only unsealed street in Shepparton, and the dust problems that this created was horrendous. So there'll be a lot of residents in that Hawkins Heights area be very pleased to see this, even though the council has made it a no-through road and blocked the traffic going through. When the road is finally sealed, which will also facilitate the other development in that area, I think everyone in that particular locality is going to be very pleased with the outcome.
Councillor Hazeman, would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 37, item 11.1, awarding of heritage grants 2018-2019. There is a recommendation on pages 37 and 38. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
I would like to move the recommendation on page 37 and 38 as a motion, and the recommendation says that the council award 12 grants from the Heritage Grants Program as outlined below. So there's a list of 12 applications. And point number 2 is to write to the 5 unsuccessful applicants and encourage them to contact council to receive feedback regarding their applications.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Second that, Madam.
Adam, Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
So this heritage grant, it's a great incentive from Greater Shepparton City Council to provide heritage grants, and basically not many councils are doing it, and especially in regional Victoria. These grants encourage heritage preservation and conservation of the heritage listed properties. Now, the general perception is that the heritage overlay basically carries a negative consequence for the property owners, but this is not the case here, as we can see, as the eligibility to heritage grants is certainly a positive side of the heritage overlay. Council has allocated 50,000 for this scheme in the 2018 and 19 budget. There were 17 applicants and 12 successful grant applications have been outlined here. And it is also good to see that these applicants are coming from not only Shepparton, but also from Tatura and small towns like Merrigum, Morilem, Dookie and Toolamba. So it's a very good initiative.
Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I just want to add that this is an example of council putting their money where their mouth is. We've been encouraging the heritage, I suppose, observations of our citizens to look at all the different places that would fit into it. We're pushing to try and keep a lot of our heritage sites. I've said it before, sometimes, as Councillor Abdullah said, it's seen negatively, potentially, but we're talking about it and we're actually doing something about it by offering. These amounts aren't huge in individual amounts, but it does help conserve some of these sites. So I think it's a great program.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. We'll now go to page 43, item 11.2, Amendment C168 to Lambert Township Expansion. There is a recommendation also on page 43. Would a councillor like to move the motion, please?
Madam Mayor, the recommendation on page 43.
Should I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
You disregard Investigation Area 6, which is situated at Toolamba. There's a request to look at this and rezone it, which is, we've gone through that process. It's now going out for public comment. I've had a few trips out to Toolamba in the last month or two, and they're well and truly aware of it, what's going on. Toolamba's at that stage, it's a lovely rural town, and there's discussion out there between the locals, and it's their decision. Some of them aren't quite sure whether they want to lose their village feel and develop and get bigger, or they want to stay roughly the way they are. This gives everyone the opportunity to have a talk and discuss it. Certainly where this section is the right place for an extension to their town. It abuts it, makes it all nice and neat. And, so it'll be good to get it out there into the community, let them have a look at it, and get their feedback.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 54 acres in the old language is 133.4 acres.
Or hectares?
4 hectares.
130, yeah, that's right, yeah, 133.4.
They changed a couple of cents.
Yeah, I know that, thank you. And that roughly, when you make quarter acre, would be 532 residential blocks, give or take. So from my perspective, I think Toolamba will stop becoming a village, as it's been described, but will effectively become a township, a very popular township. And I think it's reflective of where Greater Shepparton is going as a community. And I think that Shepparton is putting itself on the map, and these examples are a positive.
Very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we'll now go to page 49, items to be noted. We have item 12, reports from councillors nil received. Item 13, reports from special and advisory committees nil received. Item 14, notice of motion, amendment or rescission nil received. Item 15, documents for signing and sealing nil received. Councillors, we'll now go to page 50, item 16.1, Councillors' Community Interaction and Briefing Program, and there is a recommendation on page 51. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
I'll move that, Madam Mayor. That the summary of the Council's Community Interactions and Briefing Program be received.
Adam, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
All there in its naked beauty.
Okay. No. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, on page 52, item 17.1, Assemblies of Councillors. There is a recommendation on page 65. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Sutton? Very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think it's all there.
Councillor Adam?
Yeah, again, it's all there. This just notes all the different briefings that we've had as councillors and who attended, and most of these occur on Tuesdays because I prefer, I don't like Mondays myself personally, so I think Tuesday is a good day to have these briefings.
Very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? All those in favour? Please, Councillor Adam, we need show of hands. Motion carried, unopposed. We now go to page 66, item 18, urgent business not included in the agenda. Nothing received. Item 19, confidential management reports. We do have item 19.1, designation of confidentiality of information report attachments. There is a recommendation. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Ozavari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as the motion on page 66. It's self-explanatory.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think comment by exception, and I think this is all laid out there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sutton. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. And that was the final item on the agenda, councillors. I'd now like to declare the meeting closed.